What's going on, golf fans? It's your boy Gsluke here with our fades and sleepers for this week's Wyndham Championship. Gonna go through the game theory side of things and go through some of the over and underhyped plays that you might want to consider before building your lineups. Of course, the overhyped plays are fades, guys that I think you might want to consider avoiding in your builds. Now, on the flip side, right, some of the understeamed players are sleeper plays that might be a diamond in the rough or two this week that you might want to include in your player pool. But either way, guys, a lot to get into. We're gonna go 3 fades and 3 sleepers this time around. Let's go ahead and get this thing rocking. So we'll start off with our fades, which of course, maybe the guys you might want to avoid. So Russell Henley, $10,200, really checks a few boxes for me this week, and then 3 or 4 boxes in the negative direction too. So totally understand the play. Let's go over the positives first, right? Let's go over why he's a little bit of chalk. So first off, the form has been excellent, right? He's number 11 in the field when it comes to recent form, which isn't earth-shattering. He's not in the top 5, so maybe $10,200 is a little bit expensive, but in terms of course fit, you're going to hear everyone this week, right, just harp on that driving accuracy after driving accuracy over and over again, and he's definitely checking that box emphatically. He's number 1 on tour in terms of driving accuracy, so if you're really looking at the course fit perspective, right, Russell Henley is going to check that box. But if you're looking at the Bermuda putting, if you look at some of the wedge proximity buckets, he's not always top 5, top 10 in those. He's had a few seasons where he's been real good from 125 yards and in, and he's also had a few where he's left a little bit to be desired. So I understand the fit, especially from the narrative perspective, right? You take him at accuracy kind of golf courses, and that's why he's 21.1% owned. But unfortunately, that's a higher ownership number than I have for Sanjay right now, Hideki, much higher than a Sam Burns and Adam Scott and a Lowry. And you've got to ask yourself, right, is he a better player than all of the guys around him? And in fact, I'd have him as the worst player out of all 6 of those guys. So unless you're talking about a guy who just fits the golf course that well that he's going to get more ownership and a higher price tag than some of his peers, then I'm not going to be getting there. So even before we talk about this weather edge, which is a huge thing when it comes to these ownership plays, he would be a fade for me, right? I'm just not as sold on him. I think he's a little bit too expensive. And again, the form, he's number 11 in the field. It's solid, but it's not elite level like you'd expect for one of these 10K golfers. Now let's talk about the weather. So all of our fades here are going to be PM golfers. All of our sleeper plays are going to be AM golfers because there's going to be a huge edge to be had this week. On Thursday, it's looking like there's going to be a storm that comes through in the afternoon, which isn't going to bring electricity. So they'll have to play through it. There's going to be high winds involved, 15 to 30 mile an hour wind gusts, higher sustained winds, and of course, they'll be playing through a little bit of a drizzle, a downpour for at least a half an hour to an hour at some point. So it's going to be a little bit gnarly in the afternoon. And then there on Friday, in the morning, they're also calling for higher AM winds than what you see in the PM wave. So it'll play soft on Friday. I don't know if it'll play difficult, right, even in the high winds on, Friday morning. But in the afternoon, the winds die down. You're still going to have soft greens with all that rain that comes through, and those guys are still going to tear it up too. So you have the AM guys tomorrow, which will be just fine, right, going out in relatively low winds. The storms aren't supposed to come in until the afternoon. And then on Friday, they'll be able to tear it up too. So that wave is going to have a huge advantage over the other when it comes to making the cut. And Russell Henley, right, is in that PM wave, right, the one that'll be in the heavy storms there on Thursday. So this weather forecast has changed quite a bit over the last hour or so. So we're going to have to keep an eye on it, going up until lock and whatnot. But as it stands, 21.1% ownership. Right, if I was going to play anyone in the PM, it'd probably be like a Sanjay or Hideki, right, over somebody like Russell Henley. So just think he's getting a little bit too much steam there. Next up, we've got JT Poston at 20% ownership, another player that's in that PM wave. So he's got that working against him, and also the price tag is inflated, right? He's had a few good weeks in a row. His recent form is actually elite, right? He's number 2 in the field. So unlike a Russell Henley, he actually does check that box. But unfortunately for Poston, right, he's probably a solid $1,000 too expensive, right? He's an AK golfer in this kind of field, right? He shouldn't be priced ahead of like a Denny McCarthy who's had that kind of season. Maybe a few names in the AK range, right? He should be above, but like he's not better than Aberg. He's not as good as a Shane Lowry. He's not better than a Siwoo Kim at Sedgefield, right? Who absolutely loves this place. Or of course, an elite golfer like a Justin Thomas. So since there's a lot of AM guys around him that you can take as pivots, right? That's kind of what I'm expecting to do for most of my lineups. In fact, Aberg is somebody we're going to talk about as a sleeper here in just a few minutes. But with Poston, right, you play him at low ownership and at a relatively low price tag. Those are my roles when I go out there and play JT. I don't play him when he's in the 9K range, and I certainly don't play him when he's one of the chalkiest players in all of the slate. So love the guy. I play him a lot more than most do out here for PGA DFS, especially when he was more of an unknown commodity. I would take chances on him down there in the 6K range all the time. But 9K range in a field that's, weaker than normal, but still not a, horrendous field by any means, just feels like a little bit too steep of a price tag for me, particularly at 20%. And our last fade, we're going to have to go way down here to get. It's Nicholas Lindheim, who I know he's played on tour in the past. He's actually been a pretty damn good player, and he had a little bit of an injury scare there in 2022. Was not able to play for, I believe, 9 to 10 months. Came back to the Korn Ferry Tour and has had 3 really good starts in a row to start that. So is coming in with form. A lot of people are looking at the past success and trying to buy on him early. I'm just not as sold on it, right? I think if he was low owned, you could take him in 7 to 10% of lineups. I think that'd be okay, but I have him at 7.3% ownership right here. So it's not like he's being overlooked. And when you compare that to some of the guys around him, like a Davis Riley, who have got it just 3% ownership, he shouldn't be twice the ownership, right? You're still talking about somebody that did well on the Korn Ferry Tour, right? The minor league tour, for goodness sakes, right? You're talking about a AAA batter that was killing it in the AAA. Well, he might come out, to the majors and produce a little bit. It's not going to be at that same kind of level, right? So, for him to be 2, 3, sometimes 4 or 5 times higher owned than the guys around him just doesn't make much sense to me, too. He's in the PM wave, much like the other 2 golfers that were fading, and a little bit more of an unknown commodity, right? When there's this new guy to the table that's going to be 7% owned, I just don't get it, right? We've got Sam Bennett down here, who we know is pretty damn good, right? In the AM wave, who's 1% owned, who's 7 times lower owned, right? Than what you have here with Nico. That's why I'm making that pivot. So very well could go out there and impress, right? He's been in that form of late. I don't get it at 7% ownership, though. Next up, we've got our sleepers. Before we hop into the specific plays, check out my Patreon if you want my ownership for the entire field, all of those game theory decisions that I'm making. Of course, we tried to pick 3 of the diamonds in the rough here, 3 of the higher owned fades for this kind of piece of content, but there's a lot of chalk out there, right? And there's a lot of low-owned plays that you're going to have to navigate too. And I'm not just taking everyone because they're low-owned, right? They've got to have some sort of thing going for them. They've got to have the upside I'm looking for. So if you're looking for all of my analysis, my entire player pool here for GPPs this week, check out my Patreon. Everything is posted on there. But for our sleepers, we've got Ludwig Auberg first, $9,300, and the ownership he's the lowest owned guy up top, right? If you look at all the guys in the 9K range, he's by far the lowest owned, and he's also by far the most unknown commodity, right? I mean, he's what? $300 more expensive than Siwoo, $200 more expensive than JT, only $100 more than a JT Poston, and he could very well be the best player in the field, right? He's already getting all that consideration for the Ryder Cup team. In fact, I'd be surprised if he didn't make that Ryder Cup squad, and for him to go out there this week and have an impressive performance, I think it would really solidify that position. And now that we've gone more of a sample on him, we kind of know who he is, right? He does everything but the approach play well. The thing that I think this week might make it a little bit of a better fit for him is that you have a lot of wedges, right? You have a lot of those shorter clubs in hand. We don't really know his skill set yet, but maybe he's a short game wizard, right? Maybe he's really good from 125 yards and in. It's impossible to say. We don't have a big enough sample for it. And if people are just not going to take him because they don't know what to expect this week, I'll take him. The kid is an absolute stud, right? I told you guys, I think he's a top 10 talent on the PGA Tour now. Not a year from now he'll grow into that. No, I think right now could legitimately probably finish top 10 on the FedEx Cup standings if you gave him an entire season to work with. And in fact, I think if he had the whole season, he'd have multiple wins at this point. That's how good of a talent that we're talking about here. And I know it might not be the perfect course fit, but there's a few sleepers, even core plays I'm taking this week, like a Sam Burns, that aren't the perfect course fit. they just fill it up with the birdies. They can get hot, right? We know Sam Burns can get real hot with the iron play. Maybe Ahlberg does that same thing. The beauty here, he's cheaper than Sam Burns, and I think he brings the same kind of upside. So in fact, I've bet Ahlberg this week for an outright, one of the players I've added to it. And look at these Bermuda stats, gaining over a stroke per round, right? We haven't seen him this year on Bermuda, right? It's the first time we've gone to Bermuda for quite some time. I mean, if this is any sign of things to come down there in Texas, a lot of Bermuda grass where he's playing his college golf, oh boy. The field could be in for a heap of trouble this week. And if you're not playing Aberg, you might be in for a heap of trouble this week if you don't have the eventual winner. So that would be my advice. Get a few shares of Aberg, right? You know, I'm not saying go crazy. You don't even have to get leverage there, but I'd probably have a few shares of the guy if I were you. Next up, we've got Beau Hossler, $8,300, another AM Wave golfer. Meant to say it with Aberg too, right? He's going off early, right? Gets that weather edge. But Beau Hossler made 8 birdies in a row his last round, right? Over there at the 3M Open. And I think people kind of forget about that. That's a lot of momentum to create. The guy had the round of his life there on Sunday. And you know, I know, not the perfect course fit, right? He's not real accurate off the tee. He'll be laying up a lot this week, which I think will help him quite a bit. But he's got to remember, sometimes it doesn't matter how good you fit a course. Sometimes you just show up there and you play well that week, right? And Beau Hossler at 10% ownership has more than enough ability to do that, and I don't think he's getting nearly the respect he deserves. The thing that I think makes him, you know, doable at this course, he's a good putter, right? Gains nearly half a stroke per round. A lot of the guys around him that are chalk, like a Benny Ann and Aaron Rye, right, cannot putt for their lives. So I'd rather take the guy I know can fill it up with the flat stick. It just has to go out there and get hot with the wedges, right? Go out there and hit a few to 5-10 feet this week. And given what he did there in Sunday, over there in Minnesota, who knows what he can do this week. And then lastly, our last sleeper play, kind of similar, actually played really well here last year. Let's see, Beau, he's played here a few times, 1 made cut. Okay, not great, but look at this for Taylor Moore, right? T5 finished last year. So 1 for 1 on the made cuts, 1 for 1 on the top 5s, which you love to see. But what do you got to like about Taylor Moore? Another really good putter. Now on Bermuda, not his best self, so I think that's the one thing that can kind of hold him back. But last year, right, that didn't worry him all that much. Went out there top 5 finish. So maybe it's the greens here, maybe it's the Donald Ross architecture that Taylor Moore tends to like, because he's absolutely killed it on Donald Ross designs. So let's see, this T4 finish over there at the Rocket Mortgage, another Donald Ross design. Of course, this finished last year, right? The top 5 finish at this golf course. I think, and he also had a really good finish at Rocket Mortgage the year before. Another reason why we played him this year at the Rocket Mortgage. I think there might be something to that. Maybe he really likes these Donald Ross designs, kind of like a Siwoo Kim. And at $8,000, he's more than cheap enough. He's only 8.6% owned, so not a lot of people are getting there. And he's an AM Wave golfer. Really checks every box for me this week except for the Bermuda numbers. So recent form metrics are there too. He's been playing pretty decently of late, right? Gaining across all 4 categories. We zoom out a little bit. We take a broader look. It's the same thing, right? It's not like he's doing something lately that he hasn't done before. And in fact, he's normally a better player than what we've seen over the last 12 measured rounds. So really high on him this week. Seems to like these, Donald Ross classical kind of golf courses. And if that's the case at 8.6%, definitely going to be some solid leverage to be had. Alrighty, guys, that is all I've got for the fades and sleepers this week. Before you hop on out of here, smash that like button for me. And also, let me know who you're fading and who you're taking as a sleeper this week. I would love to hear your comments. Just make sure the sleeper, right? Keep them relatively low owned. Let's say, sub 10% in terms of the projected ownership. And then for our fades, let's go 15% and plus in terms of your fade ownership. I'm looking forward to hearing your guys' opinions. Also, make sure to stop on by the live stream tonight with any questions that you guys have. We'll go through the weather. We'll take a look at the most up-to-date situation, try and see if there's an edge to be had, and of course, go through your questions, some of the GPP chalk, some prop stuff too, and get ready to have ourselves a week. There's a link down below to that, so set a reminder. Also, if you want to get in the DK community contest, a link is down below to that too. It's a $1 single entry, little way to, play for some bragging rights, a little bit of cash. And if you want your lineup reviewed, a perfect way to, make sure I can check it out and give you that feedback. So check that out down below if you haven't already got in there. But until next time, guys, best of luck, and let's see you at the live stream tonight.